Portugal's default in 2011 was an important event in the context of the European debt crisis that engulfed several Eurozone countries. The country faced a sharp deterioration of its economic situation, which led to the need to accept international aid and restructure the public debt. In this text, we will look in detail at the causes, consequences, and main aspects of Portugal's default. Economic situation before the default. Portugal experienced moderate economic growth in the early 2000s, but beginning in 2008, the country entered an economic recession, exacerbated by the global financial crisis. High levels of public debt, budget deficits, and low economic growth rates became significant challenges for the Portuguese economy. By 2010, Portugal's public debt reached 93% of GDP, and the government began to struggle to service this debt. Markets began to doubt Portugal's ability to meet its debt obligations, leading to rising bond yields and a deterioration in the country's credit rating, announcing the need for a bailout. In April 2011, faced with growing financial difficulties and high debt levels, the Portuguese government, led by Prime Minister José Sócrates, sought international assistance. Portugal announced the need to restructure its debt, which was effectively recognized as a default. Negotiations with the European Union and the International Monetary Fund resulted in an agreement to provide 78 billion euros in financial aid. This aid was subject to strict conditions, including economic reform programs, budget cuts, and tax increases. Economic Reform Program. As part of the aid agreement, Portugal adopted a series of measures to reduce the budget deficit and stabilize the economy. The main measures included: 1. Reducing public spending. The government was forced to cut spending on social programs, health, and education, which caused discontent among the population. 2. Tax increases. Increases in tax rates, including VAT and income tax, resulted in additional financial burdens on citizens. 3. Labor market reform. Measures were taken to make labor laws flexible, allowing employers to hire and fire workers more easily. 4. Privatization of state assets. Portugal started the process of privatization of state-owned companies to raise additional funds. Despite the harsh measures taken by the government, the effects of default and economic relief were felt. 1. Social protests. Activation of protest movements, including mass demonstrations against the government's economic policies, became commonplace. Citizens expressed discontent over cuts in social programs and tax increases. 2. Economic recession. As a result of austerity measures, Portugal experienced a long period of recession. The country's GDP shrank and unemployment rose, reaching a record 17%. 3. Difficulties in meeting the conditions. Portugal faced difficulties in meeting the requirements of international creditors. This led to the need to revise the reform program and additional negotiations with the EU and IMF. Despite the difficult conditions, Portugal began to gradually emerge from the crisis. By 2013, the country began to show signs of economic stabilization. Reforms, albeit painful, began to bear fruit. 1. Improved fiscal performance. Portugal was able to reduce its budget deficit and improve its financial performance, helping to reduce the risk of default. 2. Economic growth. Since 2014, Portugal's economy has started to grow, leading to improved living standards for citizens and lower unemployment rates. 3. Exit from the bailout program. In 2014, Portugal ended the bailout program and returned to the international financial markets without the need for additional loans. Portugal's default in 2011 was an important lesson for the country and the entire European region. It emphasized the need for balanced economic policies, transparency in the management of public finances, and the importance of international cooperation in times of crisis. Despite the severe consequences, Portugal was able to cope with the challenges, and today it is an example of a successful recovery from the economic crisis.